Hello once again. Welcome back to Incidental Information. I'm Mark, and today I am going to be starting on a small project, being frugal, rather than buy some of these fairly expensive little items that you need around the shop, like my diamond sharpener for my scrapers. And we are machinists after all, hobbyists perhaps, but we can make stuff, right? So what I'm going to make today is I want to make a balancing spindle for my grinder. Recently, having restored the grinder, I now find that I'm getting, I guess it kind of looks like chattering on the surface of my parts. Learning how to use the grinder, so there's a learning curve there that I probably need to catch up on. But certainly, these are not perfectly balanced. I mean, it's a given, right? So I was thinking about making some sort of a balancing jig, and whether I use the balancing jig that uses two rails, where you set your bar on two ostensibly parallel rails, or round rails for contact points, or whether you set it between four wheels with bearings. Either way, you need some sort of a accurately centered spindle to slip your hub onto and allow it to rotate to find your heavy spot. So that's what I intend to make today. So how am I going to make this? Well, I could possibly start with a large bar. This is, I believe this is 1/8. 1/8. Yeah. This is a little under 1 inch. But it's a nicely machined piece of cold roll. It probably came out of some sort of a jig or instrument or whatever. And I could probably cut this whole thing down, turn this whole thing down. That seems kind of wasteful. So what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to take a 1/2 inch bar and we'll put it in a V-block, and we'll test it on a surface plate and just make sure that this is actually truly straight. It should be. No reason why it shouldn't be. It came out of my bar stock drawer. It's a nice piece of ground something. I'm pretty sure it's not stainless steel, but it's not, doesn't look like junk. Anyway, we'll clean that up a little, and then we'll take a chunk of this and bore it out, a little undersized perhaps, and I think we're going to try to heat shrink it onto this axle, if you will, and then finish machine the taper on there. I'm also going to, I don't know that I have to, machine threads on here to hold the adapter on the taper. So I think we're going to do this in the 4-jaw. We're going to put a little center on each end, and we'll see how well I can indicate that in the 4-jaw. So let's start by measuring this camera. So we're going to drop this in. I've stoned this. Well, I've not really stoned it. I actually used one of my little diamond stones, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's just a little pocket thing, and just to take any high spots off it. It's been kicking around in my stock bin for quite some time, so little dents and dings are likely to have been raised on it. And I did find two. I've taken those high spots off, and we're gonna find that high spot there and Just hold that block in place and give it a turn. Whoop. Yeah, okay, so that's pretty straight. I think that's straight enough for what I'm going to be doing. If I want to straighten it out a little more later, I can probably, put it in a press or something. Put a little stress on it. So I'm going to go with that. Okay. We have got the 4-jar on, and we've indicated this into less than half a thou, probably about 2/10. And if I spin it up, it has just that wonderful stable feel. I put my fingernail on it, and I feel no movement whatsoever other than the material moving beneath my finger. It's a beautiful thing. So let's get our center going here. And I wonder if I have any new centers here. Yeah, they all have a little bit of wear on them. What's this one? This one looks fine. So we're going to put that in our... Actually, I'm going to face this off first. So let's do that. But we're just going to take a little facing cut here. Virtually nothing on the spring pass. That's a nice face. Gonna remove you guys. Just gonna be very gentle with this. I really want the part to find its own center of rotation around the drill. Well, thanks to my wonderful wireless microphone, we have a quiet spot. So this is where I discovered that my center is anything but centered. And you'll see here in a moment. I flip this over. It's a couple of thousandths off, which is more than I really want to deal with. I put a collar on the rod to keep it from sliding through the V block. So you're just going to move the collar down at the other end, take a reading on the other side, and I think this end is off a little bit less. Yeah, it's about 2/1000ths. So I guess that center drill wasn't as sharpened as I would have liked. So let's go back to the 4-jaw, get it centered up. Looks like we're well within about a 0.5 there. Probably again about 1 or 2/10. And I'm going to take a very tiny boring bar and I'm going to bore out at the appropriate 60-degree angle our center. Okay, so now I've pretty much got you zoomed in where I want you. And I think I'm going to use red today. Actually, I'm just going to use a Sharpie. Okay, so let me back this tool out. Okay. Now let's see if I can show the eccentricity here. It's just touching. I just heard it touch. So hopefully you can see a stripe. And yep, there's that one little spot right there where it's not touching. So it's not off by much. So I hope I'm getting all the way down in there. Yep, looks like I'm all the way down to the bottom. And before I disturb the setup, I'm going to put an indicator in there. And I'm just going to see how true that is. And of course, it's way too glary. There we go. Can you see that? Yeah. Let's turn it. Well, I got a little funny how that it shifts when I maybe there's just a little wobble in this. Well, that looks pretty concentric. I mean, it keeps, no matter where I stop, it comes back to the same place. Yeah, that's a little wobble in the indicator. My indicator bearing is a little sloppy. Doesn't make me happy either, but we'll fix that some other time. Alright, I think that's good. Okay, we're right back to the same thing here, essentially. Okay, get a little air. And that looks pretty nice. Get my indicator. Now I did fix this indicator. I just had to snug up. Back out a little. I just had to snug up this one of these little adjustments here because this was wobbling sideways a little bit. So actually I want to do that this way. Okay. Get my indicator down here. Okay. Now let's see. Okay, so I see a little, might still be a little bit of wobble in there. Could probably make it a little snugger. But the important part is well, we're about a quarter of a thousand. 2.5 tenths. 2.5 tenths. Oh yeah, yeah. We're at least under 2/10. All right, so we're good. So center drills. When in doubt, start with a brand new center drill, and even then, don't trust it. But I'm very comfortable now that that this this will turn pretty true on center now. Okay, sorry for coming in the middle of this, but what I'm doing is I got my taper piece that I'm going to be machining, and I kind of thinking about how I want to do this, and it's probably going to be required. Let me turn this machine off for a second. I'm probably going to have to grind the taper to get a proper finished surface. I'm probably going to have to grind the final taper. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do now is, I wish I'd left myself a little more of this sticking out. I didn't quite leave myself enough, but I could probably get by with it. So I'm gonna do a 2-inch bore here. I'm gonna ream that to half. I'm gonna ream it to like 249, and and we're gonna heat shrink it onto the bar, and do an oversized rough cut. Just take off the bulk of the material for the taper now, so it's relatively concentric to what I'm gonna ream, the bore I'm gonna ream, and then cut it off. Press fit it to the spindle, and either take a few more cuts on the lathe if necessary. I'm hoping not, because that's going to chatter on that shaft, I think. Whether I use the 4-jaw or I turn it between centers, either way, I think it's going to be an issue. But grinding it shouldn't be. So we're going to try to get it pretty close. Just right here, roughing it. So let's finish on the. I got a 1/4 inch drill bit in there now. I think I'll go to 3/8 and 1/2 inch, or just under 1/2 inch, 29/32 or something like that. So all right, keep cutting. Okay, so I spared you some of the cutting I did on this, and as you can see, we have two distinctly different finishes. I find it remarkable that one finish ends and the next finish begins at precisely that point. So I don't know how this shaft was made, but clearly these are two different metals in here. And this one is very, very hard. And in fact, I'm having a hard time, even with the carbide tooling, I'm having a hard time getting the tooling to take the same kind of bite on the soft stuff and the hard stuff. And it seems to be climbing a little more on the larger OD as well. So my taper is a little bit off. It's pretty close, but it's still a little bit off. So we're going to have to move on to grinding now. So this is, I am not all that well versed with using carbide tooling. I know you need to take, a little more aggressive bites, and it likes to go a little quicker sometimes. I mean, I'm aware of some of the differences, but that doesn't by any means make me an expert. I probably should use more carbide, but I just really don't have a need most of the time, and I like really, really sharp, high-speed steel. But can't get away with that here. So we're going to get the tool post grinder out, and we're going to see if we can't grind that to the proper taper. And we might come back and take another cut and then finish grinding. But I want to see that grinding gives me the right taper first. Got the surface grinder in place. Sort of a strange perspective, but you've got a better view than I do. And this red cloth is soaked with cool mist to catch some of the grit, hopefully. And the rest of the lathe bed is covered with a t-shirt back here, and cover whatever I can, because after this is ground, I gotta really clean up around here. A lot of wet cloths with cutting fluids and solvents, and then come back and wipe it down again and again until I'm sure I've got any speck of grinding dust removed, because we don't want this in the ways. As worn as this bed is, doesn't need to be any more worn. So let's get grinding here. Oh, it helps to plug this in. This is my little Craftsman surface grinder, which I made quite a modification to a few years back. I don't know that I did a video on this. In fact, I don't think I did. But I machined an extension for doing inside bores, and so this is the extension that replaces this whole head here, comes out, and this goes in its place. So I have another spindle. This was fun to put together. It was a nice project. And for really tiny bores, oh come on, can't get it out of the bag here. For really tiny bores, I have this little tapered shaft with a little chuck on the end, and this is tapered, and that fits in the spindle that's in here, this existing spindle. Actually, it fits right on the end of this shaft. Take this wheel off, or not, and this screws right into the end of this spindle. You just have to take this end plate off, and that'll fit down almost a 5/8 hole with various grinding wheels on it. So anyway, a couple items there. Okay, let's get grinding. I'm still very not happy with that finish. But let's see how it blues up. A little bit of blue in here. Well, that's clearly too much blue. Yeah. That's okay. Oh, beautiful. So I had my angle right. Let's see what the... Yeah, okay, so you see I got contact all the way front to back, but I've got rings. So it's not grinding quite as well as I would like. Let me blue this up. That'll hold on there though. That will hold on there. I'm pulling pretty hard on that. I gotta twist it to get it off. So that looks pretty good. Yeah, I can see rings. All right, I might need bearings for my grinder here. I don't think the work is ringing. I think the stone is bouncing a little bit. But it's certainly a good fit. It's got the right taper. I like it. I think I'm going to part this off on the bandsaw and then just take a facing cut on the piece. So we'll bring you back when we get set up for our next operation. Okay, so I had to go out to the barn and cut this off because it was just too damn hard. Nothing in here would touch it. I don't have a carbide tipped parting tool, and even if I did, I'd be a little reluctant. This is really quite hard. This surface on here, and you can see. I don't know if you can. Hopefully you can see this. Yeah, there you go. You can see the transition between the inner metal and the outer metal, the hardened metal. I've never seen that before. I've seen stuff that's hardened, that's case hardened, and you know the transition is nebulous at best. I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's deeper in some spots. This is like two pieces of metal. I don't know whether they couldn't spray weld. I don't know what this is. I have no idea what this bar is, but it's real soft in the middle. It's like mild steel in the middle. Very easy to machine. And this stuff is it's just hard as chrome. I mean, it's just amazing. And it doesn't anneal. Now I have another piece of bar stock too that doesn't anneal. And tried my best. I got it bright orange red, hot, and stuck it in a bucket of ashes, and it took a week to cool. It's still hard as a rock. I can't cut it. Okay, so anyway, this is done, and it's a very snug fit. It's not a tight fit like I wanted, because this was not half-inch bar. This was like 498, and even my undersized reamer was a little over, and I really should have checked that. But anyway, I'm going to that's going to be my spindle. This is going to get ground again between centers. So I'll bring you back when we're ready to do that. I'm just going to glue this up now with some Loctite and let it sit overnight, and we'll conclude this I guess tomorrow or in a minute or two for you. Seems to work. Fits nice. And it finds the same spot on the wheel, no matter how I insert it in the hub. So I guess it has a neutral effect, which is good. Well, tool post grinder, definitely not my favorite tool. This one needs a little, well, it needs new stones for one, and it might need a new bearing. But the vibration certainly doesn't lend itself to accurately setting my lead screws for the cross slide or the compound, that's for sure. So I had to put a can't twist clamp on the cross slide, keep it from wiggling around with all that vibration. Alrighty, so I get to the end of editing this video, and I discovered there's no ending. So it's a couple of days later here. We're back. We're gonna try to wrap this up for you, nice and neat. So what I've done here is I don't have, like I showed you in the beginning of the video, I don't have the setup to run this bar against two level parallel edges. Nor do I have the roller stand, which is probably what I think I'm going to build. The 4 rollers. I really like that design. It doesn't necessarily need to be leveled in either plane, but you need good low friction bearings, and but easily enough to fabricate. Anyway, so for now I've set up 2 nice clean edges to roll this on. So let me bring you a little closer and show you how this worked out. Here we have our edges, which I've set up level. Right? So straight and level, and I even burnish these edges a little bit. This is just aluminum plate for now, but there was a few little bumps here. So and sure enough, I can put this anywhere on the plate, and it's gonna sit. So this is one of the old hubs, which I'll use last, or I'll use on a crappy wheel. But so here's the finished product. I still got some bluing on there. And if you saw at the end of the last frame, I polished this with my little diamond burnishing stick. And now I've measured this, and it measures somewhere between 1 and 2 10,000ths for radial run out. It really came out. I'm very pleased with the way that came out, as cheesy as my grinding setup was, and what have you. And putting various hubs on there, the axial run out, the wobble, was actually also under 2 tenths. I think I measured one, it was a little more, but so I'm very pleased with the way that all turned out. So now we put our hub into a grinding wheel and stick it on there, and it sticks pretty good. And place it on here, and I think that just happens to be the heavy spot. Yeah, the OS in Porosway was just about 3 o'clock, so I just happened to put it down there. So let me flip that 90 degrees so you can actually see it come to rest. Okay, so now it's going to rotate, and it should come back. Now, the first time I tested this, I simply laid it on the bedways of the lathe, because my lathe is fairly level. It's quite level, actually. and with some parallels up off the bedways, and tested it that way. And sure enough, it came out. There we are, OS at 3 o'clock. I don't know if you can see that. So obviously, there's a heavy spot down there. So I need to do a little drilling, the way Stan from Bar Z has shown me, and a few others. So now I'm absolutely the opposite. This is the heavy side. Huh. Wonder what that's all about. Okay, so I guess I can balance it if I get the heavy spot right above it. There's something, must have a little bump in the plate here. So let me move it over a little bit. And no, it still balances there, huh? Isn't that funny? But if I just give it a little start, it'll end up in the original position. And now it'll come on, come back. There we go. So let me try that right here. Just take a very different position. Now there must have been a little flat spot at the top of that, because I can't get it to stay now. Okay, it's just aluminum, so I wouldn't expect it to hold an edge terribly well. I must have a little flat spot one side or the other. So it's repeatable. It seems to be accurate. It settles out in that location no matter how I place the bar in the hub. So I can rotate that bar 90 degrees. It still settles out right there. Whoop, nope, right there. Yep, it just settled in just a tiny bit. So it's very sensitive. I'm very happy with the way this turned out. And when I make the stand with the wheels, I'm sure I'll shoot that. And I think that's I've taken enough of your time. So again, thanks for watching, and like, subscribe, share, what have you, and we'll see you down the road.